now we come to the second ever episode of Thunderbirds I ever saw, called Day of Disaster. Now this one follows a rocket ship that's all set to go to Mars, but unfortunately it has to cross over this bridge that's been badly damaged by a storm, and it ends up falling into the river because it can't take the weight, and the impact of landing on the seabed and getting buried by under all this rubble causes the countdown to commence, which means the rocket will end up being blown to pieces unless Thunderbird 4 can save them.
Let's remember that this is all going on in Britain, so it's like saying that Britain should be the head of the future space program organisations. Things should go on here. It's Anderson being very patriotic.
Absolutely. I said absolutely again. I've noticed that I keep saying absolutely a lot during these episodes, but
absolutely.
Oh,
you should
son
be a
of
doctor.
a gun. But anyway, Brains is the one who organises the planning for these missions. Well, this specific mission. Rather than Jeff Tracy being in control of everything, Brains is on the scene, communicating to International Rescue through his communicate wristwatch. Unfortunately, he's in the company of two very concerned men who are trying to fix the rescue themselves, and they're looking at Brains, thinking of him as some kind of crazy man talking to his watch.
I think one of the morals here that this episode was trying to tell us is that if someone offers you help, there's no need in accepting it. You just swallow your pride, really.
Yeah, that's right. These guys are trying to spend like hours trying to rescue them themselves. People even suggest, oh, maybe you should call International Rescue, but the guys in charge are like, no, we can handle this ourselves, And so, when it comes to International Rescue finally getting there, they cut it very fine.
I think one of the debates here is that maybe International Rescue would make all emergency services redundant, but that's very untrue, because in the last episode we saw the police helping out with, the hood and problem, and, they usually rely on the police to help out, and we even had a police-themed story already with the perils of Penelope.
And the fire engines and the ambulances, they're still always in use.
So really, it's not as if International Rescue are undermining, like, the emergency services. It's like they're what you need in an extreme circumstance. Like, this is an extreme circumstance because we've got a rocket that's about to blow up probably part of England if they don't do something about it, and really the equipment that most emergency services have for this kind of race against time, a literal race against time here, because there's an actual clock 12 hours before the rocket goes off. International Rescue is what you need. Yeah, you're counting down the seconds the whole time. Now, what makes this episode stand out amongst a couple of the others is it's got a blend. There are a lot of tense moments in it, but it's mostly a very comedic episode. More so comedic than Edge of Impact was, because you're following a very eccentric Brains trying to command this rescue all by himself, and doing it through his watch, and everyone thinking that he's crazy. There's also a very funny scene early on involving edible remote transmitters, involving Grandma Tracy losing hers. Yes. It's kind of interesting that, in the future it's been predicted that people will communicate via their watches, as in they've got like Skype in their watch or something, as you see with Gordon and Scott when when Brains is talking to them. But it's like nowadays we've got these these Google watches, which apparently everyone says are really, really redundant. There's no point in them, but you never know if that's the point of watches. Maybe in the future, you never know. It could catch on. You wouldn't have guessed that in 2065 the idea of telephone wristwatches would be a novel idea, but I guess since the unpopularity of the Apple Watch and stuff like that, it's probably closer to reality than we expect. And I guess Jerry Anderson wasn't anticipating mobile phones either. That too. Star Trek did, though. Yes, it did. Trekkies. Another thing that makes this episode stand out is the amount of water sets that we use. Yeah, granted, we saw a lot of quite a few water sets in Terror in New York with the Sentinel and transporting Thunderbird 4, but this is a rescue where it all takes place around the debris of a destroyed bridge. So there's, water cranes, and even the stations are all around just this massive river, and the whole operation is around this area. So, very ambitious set to have just a massive, body of water to operate on. You also see Thunderbird 2 using a grapple hook to pick up the rubbish straight from inside the water, so that's another interesting novelty about Thunderbird 2. And this is the debut of Thunderbird 4 being deployed from Pod 4, which Thunderbird 2 just drops straight into the water like a stone. I always wondered as a kid how he got it back, and this is something that the new Thunderbirds improves on. In the new Thunderbirds, he simply winches it back up with cables. But in this series,
it's left more of a mystery. I think there is one episode where he does just land and pick it up, but we'll just have to see which episode it is. We'll eventually come to it if it does exist.
But we'll see if, well, I guess this is an episode that belongs to Gordon, really, because it's his kind of rescue. Because every episode, in a sense, belongs to a particular character. Like, if it's a space mission, it belongs to Alan. If it's a underwater mission, it's Gordon. If it's, say, on land, it's mostly Virgil who does it. I don't really know if there are that many that really belong to Scott, because Scott is really just a pathfinder who sets everything up. He's kind of like the second in command, like the right-hand man to Jeff Tracy, because he's directing the rescue whilst the heavy work is going on. He's
like the Lieutenant Green to Jeff Tracy's Colonel White, if we were to be more specific.
Yeah, so that's kind of about it. But I think what really makes this episode really worth watching is the ending, where Brains ends up with a psychiatrist.
And the psychiatrist even begins to doubt himself when Lady Penelope shows up and starts talking to her powder compact. He's like, maybe I should see a psychiatrist.
So really, I think what's interesting is that, if you think someone is crazy, just think twice, because they may save the world, as Brains has demonstrated.
Mm-hmm. But no, this was a very fun episode to sit through. I'm not sure. The next episode is 30 Minutes After Noon, which is an episode I haven't actually seen.
It is actually one of my favourites.
Oh, well, there we go. It's going to be a clash of opinions. Well, maybe not a clash of opinions, but a clash of perspectives. I'll be seeing this episode for the very first time, and Dimitri will be reflecting on it quite warmly, I imagine. But I'm very excited for this one.
So yeah, we'll see you next week when we take on 30 Minutes After Noon. And yeah, it's quite interesting. I mean, the way you say absolutely not, I really think you should see a doctor.
FAB.
FAB.